Source the entire process. Hi Mark, nice to see you.
You too, Prashant.
Where are you, Mark? In your house? Or
Yeah,
mom's house?
yeah, Mom's house.
She's moved into the home now.
Yeah, she's gonna stay there for who knows how long. Yeah, going forward.
Yeah. Okay, friends, let's go ahead and start with reciting the Namo Tassa and the three refuges for those who like. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dhammang saranang gacchami, Sanghang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. So good evening, friends, to this Wednesday evening Dhamma discussion and meditation practice. So I hope you're all able to read through the Maha Nidana Sutta that I had sent out on Monday. And I've gone over this before, but usually the Mahanidana Sutra, it's usually translated as the Dependent Origination. And sometimes it's the translation by Venerable Kanisaro that I sent out on the attachment uses the term dependent co-arising. Basically, it kind of means the same thing, just again, as we've seen before, different translators will translate these Pali terms in different ways. Now, the dependent origination is the description of the process of birth and death, and explaining kind of how the mind creates the world in its sort of what I like to call the world creating process, and how birth comes to be and how death also comes to be. Now, this dependent origination is usually described as linking the mind of this life. When a person dies in this life, if they still have karmic residue left, that means they still have conditioning and they haven't reached enlightenment. The mind will be leave this body and then re-arise in another form, either as a human being again, it could, or in a deva realm, or in the animal realm, depending on the karma. And then the person lives that life, that whole life, undergoing the process of karmic accumulation. The other steps of the path and reaching their lifespan or not, depending on situations, until they die, and then the mind is reborn again. So that is the kind of standard, or let's say low level of the meaning of the rebirth. But this whole process also occurs on the micro level, what I like to call moment-to-moment rebirth, which we'll get into later. But first, a person should have a good kind of intellectual understanding of this process of lifetime to lifetime rebirth. And this is what in this sutta, Venerable Ananda comes to the Buddha and he says, "It's amazing, Lord, it's astounding how deep this dependent arising is and how deep its appearance. And yet to me, it seems as clear can be." This is what Ananda, said to the Buddha. And the Buddha's reply was, "Don't say that, Ananda, don't say that. Deep is this dependent co-arising, and deep its appearance. And it's because of not understanding and not penetrating this Dhamma, this generation with its human beings, gods, devas, and animals has become like a tangled skein, or let's say a tangled ball of thread, or a knotted ball of string, like matted hair or rushes. And it doesn't go beyond birth and death, beyond the planes of suffering. And so this refers to probably how Ananda understood, because Ananda was not an arahant. He had only reached the level of a sotapanna. And so their complete understanding about the complex, deep nature of the mind was not perfect. So Ananda was, he could understand this lifetime to lifetime rebirth kind of intellectually and to some extent from his practice of meditation, but didn't understand it in the fullest, deepest way. And this is what the Buddha understood, and why he wanted to give this discourse to make it clear to Venerable Ananda. So anyway, I think most of you have read the traditional, Paticca Samuppada, or the dependent origination. And the standard beginning of that sutta is that, depending on ignorance arise volitional formations. Dependent on volitional formations arises consciousness. Dependent on consciousness arises name and form. I'm not going to go into all the rest because you can easily read that. But pertaining to this sutra, it's important that the original description starts with dependent on ignorance arises of volitional formations. And basically, ignorance means not understanding the truth about the mind and not understanding this very dependent origination. And the volitional formations is a little bit harder to understand, but it's actually the accumulated karmic residue that's in our unconscious mind. And it's the actions and thoughts of body, speech, and mind that we have been accumulating. And when we're reborn, these karmic impressions and habits are still there in the mind as these volitional formations. I mean, it's one of the hardest aspects of the Dhamma of the mind to understand, but hopefully it will become more clear. But anyway, so these first two steps of the dependent origination are not mentioned in this sutta. That's what's interesting. What makes this sutta different from the standard descriptions of Paticca Samuppada, that ignorance and volitional formations are not mentioned. And the Buddha took a different approach. He didn't start with dependent on ignorance arise, all the other steps. And it was very interesting the way the Buddha approached this. And it's one of the only suttas in which the Buddha, changed his sort of approach to explaining this. Because, the average person, say, depending on ignorance and karma formations, it's kind of like, what does that mean? It's not very clear, right? If you go down out of Walmart and Home Depot and ask a person coming out with, their bags of groceries, what is ignorance? What is volitional formations? And they'll look at you with a blank stare or turn their eyes up and walk away, But if you ask them about what is the cause of suffering, pain and suffering, then they might, oh, what's that? Oh, yeah, pain and suffering. I can relate to that, right? So that was the Buddha's approach in this particular sutta. So, if one is asked, is there an observable, or in this translation, he uses a word that's not very common in English, a demonstrable requisite. But it basically means an observable, reason. Is there a observable reason or condition for aging and death? So, so the average person, if you ask them, what's the cause of aging and death? Well, they've never been asked that. They say, well, cancer, I guess, or, I don't know, aging, but they might say, well, they probably wouldn't guess birth at first because it's not a common question that their school teachers are going to ask them in elementary school or even high school, right? Because, depending on a religion, they might say, well, God caused your birth or whatever, or God caused it. But the Buddha is saying that the answer would be, if you're asked that question, depending on what does birth arise, or the aging and death, the answer is birth. Aging and death come from birth. Now, can anybody argue with that? Now, later on in the sutta, the Buddha goes in and explains these conditions even in more detail, but we're just going to go over it first in this way, because we all know basically what aging and death is, and of course all the sickness, disease, and sufferings that are connected with the physical body that come along with aging and then death. But it's dependent on being born. Because if you're not born, are you going to age or die? Well, probably not. So anyway, and then, so he starts with, aging and death, because that's something everybody can observe. And it's not too far-fetched that when they hear the answer, birth is the cause of aging and death, most people are not going to argue with that. And then he goes on to ask, what is the condition for birth to come? And his answer would be, depending on the volitional formations, birth arises. Now, this gets a little bit more complicated or difficult to understand, because again, the volitional formations are there now. Or becoming. Becoming is the cause of birth. Now, becoming means the accumulation of the karma through one's lifetime. And ever since you were a baby, you started to learn language, and as you grew up, you started doing a lot of actions, and like telling lies, stealing, killing cockroaches, maybe doing other things, and you grow up older and older and go through life, and you have sexual misconduct, you have intoxicating the mind, or all kind of unwholesome actions that bring their results. Of course, good actions too. But that's becoming. Becoming means all the actions that you do, thoughts and speech and actions that you do during the lifetime is called becoming. That means those habits are becoming stronger, they're becoming more complex. And like that tangled ball of string or an intricate web, a spider's web, this web of our actions of body, speech, and mind within the world creates this, the sort of the net of karma. Anyway, that's a description of becoming. And because of that, at the time of death, when all that karmic conditioning is still there, depending on it, is where you might arise next as a human being or as an animal or in a heavenly world or so on. Anyway, again, it's a little bit maybe difficult to understand. But anyway, so becoming is the cause of the the birth. So birth is the cause of aging and death. Becoming is the cause of birth. And then he goes back through this depending on what is the cause of becoming. Well, it's craving. And then what is the cause of craving? It's, grasping is the cause of becoming. And the cause of grasping is craving. The cause of craving is feeling. So I'm not going to go through all that because most of you know that, and you can easily reread that. So, but the important part that I wanted to mention in this is that, he starts this particular sutta with, approaching it from the birth and death, because that's the common, immediate and common thing everybody will understand. And the suffering that arises with that. So it's a given that when there's birth, there'll be aging and all the suffering that comes with going from a baby all the way up to the time of death, and then death itself. And death is suffering because most people don't want to die. Or at least if they haven't reached their natural old age, they usually want to keep living. To see their kids graduate from school or college and get married and have grandkids. So this is that craving and desire that people have, why they want to keep prolonging their life, even though they have a lot of suffering. But at some point, they can no longer hold on to that, kind of clinging. So, and then the sutta keeps going back from the cause of feeling is contact. And depending on contact, what gives rise to contact? Name and form. And name and form is where, and then what is the cause of name and form? Consciousness. And so, and then it says, depending on what does consciousness arise? Consciousness comes from name and form. And so that's the end of this particular sutta. So it goes from birth down to name and form, and it went from consciousness to name and form up to birth and death. So again, it left off on both ends. It left off the volitional formations and the ignorance. And the last paragraph of this particular sutta is that, from name and form comes the consciousness. So consciousness is a requisite for name and name and form is a requisite for consciousness. And so this is how that kind of they mutual support each other. There can be no name and form without consciousness, and no consciousness without name and form. And this is probably one of the hardest parts of the the dependent origination to understand, and especially this version of dependent origination. And so anyway, that's what the important part is understanding this important connection between name and form and consciousness. So now we're going to probably stop at this point in the sutra and not go further because it's a long sutra and it's kind of complicated. So I don't want to go, and we'll cover the next parts of it next week. But I want to talk about the name and form and the consciousness and how they're connected. Okay, maybe we'll take some questions now. I see no one had sent in any questions by email. So, Suzanne, you have a question?
Thanks, Bhante. We
can't hear you. Are you muted?
No, I'm not. I'll just project a
We can't
little.
hear you.
I'm not unmuted.
Anybody hear what she's saying out there?
Yes,
Yeah?
we can hear her.
We can hear.
Very well.
Is something wrong with your? Is something wrong with
Hold
your
on, I
audio?
can't hear you. We're gotta check my own sound reception here. Can anybody else out there speak up and say I'm not hearing anybody out there? I heard Michael.
Hello.
Yes,
Hello.
Bhante from Anne.
Okay, let me come back to Suzanne. Suzanne, can you say something?
Yes, Bhante, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you
Okay.
now. I'm sorry for that.
No worries. We're in the digital age. What do we expect? Bhante, in looking at a million times or so that cycle, in coming to contact, in studying Gestalt therapy, the cycle, there's some similar pieces, but what I wanted to ask you, in Gestalt work, the beginning of that cycle is sensation. Then it moves into mobilization. Then it moves into contact. And from that perspective, contact is a good thing. You're engaging with the world and on and on and on. But from the dependent origination perspective, I get the feeling that contact is not necessarily all that great. Because it's mixed up with name and form, and then that gets mixed up with becoming. Did I get that right, or am I just as confused as anything?
Well, it is a very difficult subject. And if people are coming from a non-Buddhist background, such as maybe Gestalt therapists, I don't know too much about the Gestalt, but that could be a problem for them. But according to dependent origination, depending on name and form comes first, followed by the contact. And contact is described as a triple conjunction between you have your ear that is working or your eye that is working. You have a sound or a visible object coming to your eye, And then consciousness has to be attracted to that impact. So this is called triple conjunction. There's three things necessary for a full-blown sensory experience. What do you call a sensory experience? That the contact and name and form basically have to come together, but the contact produces the feeling, and the feeling produces is the craving. But the important part is that that consciousness is attracted to the sensory impingement. And if the consciousness is not there, the name and form will not arise, or the contact won't arise. And if you're deaf and a sound comes through your ear, you're not going to have hearing consciousness, because consciousness rises through the respective sense organs. And this is where non-Buddhist or non-Eastern psychological concepts are going to get a little difficult for them to differentiate this. And let's say your ear is working and there's sounds going around, but as you all know, let's say you're deeply absorbed in a book, and you're deeply absorbed in reading. There may be sounds going around you. Maybe the cat is meowing in the background, or a car is going down the road, and your ear is working, but there won't be consciousness, so you won't be hearing those objects. But if you're not absorbed in the book and you're just sitting kind of calmly, then you may hear those sounds because your consciousness is not distracted. So I'm just saying this to show that the consciousness is attracted to the sensory impingement, which is sort of the name and form. It comes together at that time. Or it's, you have to have a body and mind. That is the name and form. And those come together at the point of only then does the feeling arise, and only then does the craving arise. So I don't know if that helps to explain that to you, Susan.
I don't know, Bhante. I don't know. But one more other thing.
It is difficult. It's
Yeah.
it's very difficult, especially because of the difference between non-Eastern forms of psychology, and even though science thinks they're on top of everything, in terms of consciousness and the brain, they're way behind the Buddha, in my view.
Just one little thing, and then I'll be finished. In looking at that cycle, which has a lot in it, I'm sure you know what I mean, don't you? The cycle of dependent origination.
Of course, there's a lot in it.
Yeah.
That's why we're going to
Yes.
not
And-
going over the whole thing now.
Really. And when someone's aware of becoming or whatever they're doing, and you could kind of jump off of that cycle if there's mindfulness. Is that true, Bhante?
Yes, I'm going to be talking more about
Okay.
that later.
Okay.
But yes, there's the karmic accumulation is once you have the contact, then the feeling arises, then craving for the feeling, and then grasping the grasping is just the increased craving, and the planning and scheming, how are you going to get that object? And then the transition from grasping to becoming is actually your actions done based on to get that object or to get away from the object. So if you have mindfulness at the point of craving, if you can observe the initial desire arising, you could cut off the further action. But if you don't have good mindfulness and it develops into grasping, you can still, if your mindfulness comes before the becoming, you can stop the action.
Okay.
But the crucial link is between grasping and becoming. That's the sort of the last frontier.
Okay.
Because once you do the becoming, you can't take it back. Becoming is the actual karmic action that you do. I'll just give you an example. Let's
Okay.
say a mosquito lands on my hit. And so there's a feeling arise. And I'm awake, I'm not asleep, so the consciousness is attracted to that contact. And then there's an unpleasant feeling arise. And then maybe there's the desire to push the mosquito away. But if I have mindfulness and I say, well, okay, it's an unpleasant sensation, but so what? Just let it be there and go about your business. So I didn't wind up killing the mosquito. The mosquito flew off anyway by itself. But if I didn't have that kind of mindfulness, then I felt the mosquito and I started thinking, oh, that mosquito might have malaria, might have dengue, this and that. That's the grasping of the mind. That's the increasing of the craving and the planning and the scheming. And so that urge to get rid of it because of the fear of getting malaria or dengue or something else, or just because you don't like the pain, you might then, smash the mosquito. That's the karma, that's of killing, or even just getting rid of it, even if you didn't kill it. You pushed it away, still, that's the reaction. So you can't take that back because that has already increased your aversion and the sense of self. Now, this is very difficult to understand, and that's why I wasn't going to explain it right now. But
Okay. Thanks, Bhante. I get it a little bit more, but thank you. Thank you. Thanks.
I see another yellow hand up there, Damon.
Hi.
You got
Okay.
it.
So Bhante, I was expecting, when you announced that you're going to talk about this topic tonight, dependent origination, that for sure, the Sutta was going to mention ignorance, but it doesn't. So, and what do we? I mean, how could you discuss 12 links without talking about ignorance?
That's because this particular sutta isn't about all 12 links. It's about,
okay.
And the Buddha, as I mentioned at the beginning, it was because of Ananda's not understanding the sutta that he wanted to focus more specifically on the name, form, and consciousness connection. But it's implied. Ignorance is already implied. But the Buddha gave different talks depending on the intellectual level of the people that he was talking to. And so, it came up because Ananda made this statement that, dependent origination appears to be clear to me and all that. And the Buddha wanted to point, he knew that he didn't understand these subtler aspects of it. And that's why he focused on the way he gave this teaching to Ananda and didn't include ignorance. But certainly ignorance is part of it.
Okay. And then the other part of my question is for, are we going to talk this time or next time about how this all relates to sense of self?
Yes, that's the sense of self comes near the end of this sutta and how the sense of self is created. Now, hopefully next week, but I didn't want to go too far because we wouldn't be able to finish the whole sutta in one session.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's see what's in the chat box. Oh, these are not really questions, right? Okay. So is there any other questions? Again, you need to really read the sutta like really many times over to understand that. But I would sing. So the name and form produces the consciousness. No, consciousness produces the name and form. Wait a minute. Your consciousness produces the name and form. Now, this refers to when you die, the consciousness leaves the body. And that consciousness gets impregnated or arises creates another name and form in the next life. So if you're going to be born as an animal or as a human being, that consciousness goes into a womb which has just developed at conception. Or in other words, according to the Buddhist idea about rebirth, at the moment of conception, when the mother and father produce those material elements to create that one-celled new embryo, or whatever you want to call it, the consciousness is the spark that causes that being to start developing, cell division and so on. And depending on what kind of a body it's going to get and different traits that it might have, the consciousness, which has the volitional formations and the impressions from the previous life, have come together with that consciousness to create the name and form. That means the new physical body. And in terms of a human, it'll be 9 months in the womb developing, and then it comes out, and that's when it gets contact with the world. Things start impinging on the world. So anyway, that's why and if the consciousness doesn't come to that new, let's say, fetus or embryo or being, then it won't develop. There won't be a being, that particular one. Or if it's going to be spontaneously born as a deva, it won't create a deva body for itself. The consciousness needs to be there for the name and form to arise. And without the name and form, the consciousness can't really exist independently. So that's why the name and form is dependent on consciousness, and consciousness is dependent on name and form. But initially, the consciousness has come there from the previous life. But if the name and form doesn't get developed, consciousness can't exist. And that's what this sutra addresses that in the next part of it. And I'll just mention it now because we're talking about it. But this is a very difficult part to understand. Okay, listen to this. It says, from consciousness as a requisite condition come name and form. Thus it's been said, and this is the way to understand how consciousness gives rise to name and form. If consciousness were not to descend into the mother's womb, name and form would not take shape in the womb. That means the consciousness is like the electricity that starts that cell division of the new baby going and creating a new body. But at some point along, if that something happens and interrupts that and consciousness leaves, that's the cause of a miscarriage. And the fetus won't continue to develop. That's why there's stillbirths and there's miscarriages after, even after some weeks, a woman might have a miscarriage because for some reason consciousness couldn't remain there and it had to depart. Or the name and form got so defective that it couldn't support the consciousness and it miscarried and died. And so this would be sort of the Dhamma way of explaining this very difficult concept. But it's just to show the intimate connection between name and form and consciousness. The name and form, to keep it simple, is the physical body, the new body that is coming to be, but it needs the consciousness to keep it going. And that's where, again, so-called modern Western science doesn't fully understand this process because they don't understand the nature of the consciousness. They don't think consciousness has come from any other place. They think it's produced in the brain. This is the difficulties. And so people that are explaining these sutras are based on their Western scientific background. They will have a difficulty, explaining these things. Is there what? Okay, Joe Schaefer, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I was wondering if the Buddha ever said anything about why or how the consciousness jumps from one form at death to a new form where it will be born, instead of kind of just disappearing or such. Like,
Yes.
I have difficulty understanding that.
Well, those two things were left out in the sutra. Depending on ignorance arise volitional formations. So those are the first two parts of the dependent origination. Then dependent on consciousness arises name and form. That's where this sutta starts. So the volitional formations is what produces the consciousness. And the volitional formations come from the previous ignorance that's accumulated. So that's why really ignorance and volitional formations are what creates the consciousness, which is the fuel for generating the rebirth consciousness. And so that's why the difficulty, I think that's where your question was. It's that the volitional formations is what gives the consciousness, it kicks it out to another life. Because when you attain full enlightenment, there's no more volitional formations. Therefore, it does not produce any rebirth consciousness.
Okay.
That's the thing. That's the missing link here.
Right. Okay.
All right.
That somewhat makes sense. It's a difficult subject.
Yes, very difficult subject. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there see a hand from Helen? Helen, do you have a question?
Yes. If when feeling tone comes up, if you just say unpleasant, are you stopping the whole cycle? Let's say, anxiety or sadness or those feelings come up. And if you just say unpleasant and not let it do anything, does it stop from clinging and craving and becoming?
Well, that depends on the strength of your mindfulness and your wisdom. Just saying it's unpleasant, you might be able to delay the reaction for a couple of seconds, but then if that unpleasantness gets stronger and stronger, you may not be able to resist it, and then you might give in to, worrying or reacting about it or thinking about it more. But theoretically, yes, at the point of contact, when you first experience this unpleasant feeling arise, to know it's an unpleasant feeling, but you have to understand that it's not me or mine or myself, this unpleasant feeling. You have to understand, how does this unpleasant feeling arise? And you see it's just a habit reaction of your mind, and it's empty of any absolute, it's connected with the past. This unpleasant feeling arises because of the past conditioning. That's what you have to understand. And that understanding helps you to resist it and not to want to continue feeding it by continually reacting. Like the example of the mosquito, landing on your face. There's an unpleasant feeling there, but if you can examine it, this is where investigation of Dhamma, you investigate it. Well, what is this unpleasant feeling? Okay, because of contact, it's a little insect that lands there. Who is this I that's reacting? This and that. You relax around it, and the mosquito flies off and, doesn't bite you, and it's finished. But if you start, reacting and getting upset, you create more aversion.
I think I understand what you're saying. Sometimes I use the practice of just saying unpleasant,
No, that is a standard kind of mindfulness teaching, training, yes.
But today,
feeling, but you have to understand what is the feeling and how it's caused and how these feelings arise and continue and create karma. That's also, it's important to understand that too.
I see that when I'm meditating, I see that these thoughts and feelings are just, they're not me. They come and go and they're not me. But in my everyday life, of course, I identify with them more. So today, my mind was very negative over a medical report. And what I did, and to kind of help me throughout the day as I'm doing my errands, is I kind of was with my breathing. I was going 1, 1, 2, 2, and all these negative thoughts and feelings would come up. But it was kind of diffused with me trying to be with my breath as I'm doing my errands. And it seemed to soften and relax. I didn't take them so personally. Do you know what I mean? They were part of the back, they were part of the foreground, but I also had the breath, the 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, to kind of diffuse the whole thing.
Yes.
Is that maybe a good technique to kind
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now,
Okay.
you could substitute just, this is not me, this is not me. You could just substitute any number of things, but if the counting the breaths helps, okay, but there's other ways too. But the main thing is, if you didn't have anything, the mind, 100% of the attention would latch on to that particular thought or feeling and trigger off more thoughts, but you're diluting it. You're diluting the reaction by keeping part of your attention on the feeling, on the breathing or the feeling. And so that is what softens it. But if we don't have that kind of detached space and 100% of our attention and identification goes to that, then it triggers off the more of the worrying and things like that. So that's why these techniques of mindfulness, like noting, hearing, feeling, unpleasant. These are ways of creating a little buffer zone and not reacting so quickly. And by doing that, the thing might just vanish and go away by itself.
At first, I was
That's
just
the real practice. That's the technique of mindfulness training.
At first, I was just being mindful, repeating back to myself all my negative thoughts, and then seeing, irritation. But I felt still it was just too much for me. So that's when I went to okay, we got to find a way to distance ourselves, the 1, 1, 2, 2.
Yeah, or just do an M&M at that time. Just stop what you're doing, take a deep, slow breath, hold in the breath for a few moments, and just come back to just, breathing in, standing, breathing out, standing, or whatever, counting your breaths. It doesn't matter, just something that will help you to not allow the mind to go into the object.
Thank you. Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, friends, I think we'll bring this. Okay, let's see what the last question is then. Okay, this question in the chat box is becoming the same as existence. And yes, see, this is the problem that comes with different translators. Now, usually becoming is depending on grasping gives rise to becoming. But some translators like Bhikkhu Bodhi say existence, but it's the same. That means you become in a certain existence. You become as a human being, you become as an animal, you become as a deva, you become as a Brahma, you become as a hungry ghost. That's the existence that you're creating, but it's created by the type of karma that you are doing in that lifetime, the kind of becoming. So, but that's why you have to understand the meaning behind some of these words and how they're connected. But I prefer to use the word becoming because it's the actual accumulation of the karma that existence is already, we're existing, but it's because we've practiced the becoming. And again, these are difficult to understand, and it takes a lot of, deep meditation and reflection, and especially, contemplating this dependent origination over and over helps these things to become more clear. Okay, well, we're not going to have enough time for meditation if we. You have one more question, Helen? Or is that finished? Huh?
No, my hand must still be up. No,
Okay.
yeah.
We'll talk more about these things next week.
Yeah, there's a good question in the chat.
Namarupa. You have to figure it out for yourself. Read the suttas over and over 100 times, meditate on it, and hopefully it'll become clear. But maybe we'll discuss them later. Okay, thanks, friends. Let's take a few minutes break so we can come back, get into the body with a little deep breathing and some stretches, and then see if we can figure this thing all out. Okay? See you back in a few minutes. Okay, friends, so just stand straight, keep your feet just a few inches apart. Too far apart, closer to this. Relax your shoulders and arms. Just gently close your eyes. Feel the eyes and the socket. See if you can kind of feel the general outline of the standing body. And begin some deep, slow breathing for 2 or 3 seconds just to breathe in, expanding your lower lungs, rib cage and upper chest, the abdomen, rib cage and upper chest. Hold the air in for 2 seconds, slowly breathe out. Try to feel the last bit of air go out of the lungs. And the next in breath. Take a few more breaths like that. Developing this mindfulness. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, standing here and now. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, standing here and now. Breathing in, feeling the whole body. Breathing out, feeling the whole body. Now we're going to combine the breathing with these movements. On the next in-breath, raise the hands over the head, interlock the fingers, turn the palms up, straighten the arms, stretch upwards, look at the back of your hands. Out breath, touch the top of your head. The in-breath, palms up, straighten the arms, stretch the head back, bend backwards a little bit. The arch of the lower spine. Out breath, touch the top of the head. Third time, hold the upward stretch longer. Bend back a little more. Feel the sensations. Release your fingers in the out breath. Arms back to the sides, close the eyes, feel the sensations in your hands and fingers. Don't give your mind time to jump into thoughts. Just pure body vibration. Just remember standing, standing. Feel the outline of the standing body, the head on top, arms at the sides, feet pressing the floor. All those different body vibration contacts giving rise to consciousness, creating name and form, standing body. It's all part of that consciousness, name and form connection. In the next in-breath, lift up on the toes, arms over the head, face the hands toward each other, stretch up. Out breath, come back down. Use the in-breath to help lift up the body, like blowing up a helium balloon. The body rises up. Stretch. Out. In. Out. Relax. All those sensations you're feeling, if they feel pleasant, that's depending on name and form or contact, produces feeling, cellular vibrations in the body, giving rise to those sensations. Could be pleasant sensations, or If you hit a painful spot, it could be a painful sensation. It's dependent on the contact, rubbing together of muscle tissue, contact of feet pressing the floor, there's the feeling of hardness. Could be painful or pleasant. It's the way you meditate. On the next in-breath, we'll do side bending. In-breath, raise both arms up. Keep the fingers and arms straight. Out-breath, bend over the right side. In-breath up. Left side, out-breath. In-breath up. Again to the right, out-breath. In. Once more to each side. The out-breath over the arms. The whole time that process is going on, consciousness, name, form, contact, feeling, especially those four repeating themselves hundreds and thousands of times in the space of a few seconds. That's why it's difficult to see. We now spread the legs and feet apart about 3 feet. Hold the arms out to the sides. We do the twisting from right to left. We breathe in. In the out breath, twist to the right. Keep the eyes focused on the hand going back. In breath, back to the front. Let your feet turn with the body, then go to the other side, the out breath. Feel the sensation, feeling, in breath, the front, into the right, out breath. Feeling, out. Once more to each side. Lower the arms, relax. Close the eyes. Feel each foot pressing the floor. Feel that contact. Foot pressing the floor. Obvious contact. Producing that feeling, sensation. Clothing touching the skin is also contact. Producing feeling. critical part of dependent origination to observe contact producing feeling. Now place the hands together at the chest. In breath, hands over the head. Out breath, hands to the chest, bend the knees, lower down. With a stretch in the hips or knees. Painful sensation. In breath, lift up. Out. Out breath. And feel the outline of the whole body, each foot spread apart. Hands touching the sides, clothing touching the skin. Head balanced on top, eyes in the sockets. Like hundreds of different contacts occurring simultaneously, which gives rise to the idea of a body, standing body. It's a perception created within the mind. Now, spread your legs a little bit wider apart, move forward and backward bending. Let the hands touch the front of your legs. Breathe in. On the out breath, bend forward, let the hands come to your kneecaps. Keep your arms straight, legs straight, and flatten the spine. Keep the head lifted up, looking out straight ahead. In breath, lift up. Hands around underneath the buttocks for support. Let the head go back. Out breath, gently bend backwards. Keep your eyes open, not too far. First time. With the arch in the spine. In breath, lift up. Out breath, and bend forward. Let the hands come below the knees, about halfway if you can. Still keep the head up, legs straight. Do the extra stretch in the back of the legs, through the spine. All those hundreds, thousands of different contacts, right? In breath, lift up. And the back bend, out breath. In breath. The third time, let the hands come down as far as you can towards your ankles or feet, and then hold on there longer. Feel the extra stretch in the back of the legs, let the little bones in the lower spine stretch out. All those different sensations or separate contacts producing separate feelings. In breath, lift up. Once more, the back bend, just be careful. . 。  . 。  . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . In breath, lift up. The out breath, relax the shoulders and arms. You might feel some pleasant sensation, a pleasant feeling arise because of contact produces feeling. It could be a painful sensation. It could be grasping or aversion arising, depending on the feeling. You like it or don't like it. Little light tingling sensations, you might enjoy those. It's a pleasant feeling. Bring it rise to maybe attachment. It's a painful feeling. The mind is saying, oh, it's too much for me. I don't want to do that. That's the way we contemplate the teacher Samuppada. Okay, now bring the feet back together. Just feel the whole body standing. Okay. Now we'll mindfully come back to the seats, get ready for the sitting awareness. Okay, friends, just get comfortable in your sitting posture. So try to sit with a straight spine. Just keep your head lifted up, chin level with the floor. Just gently close your eyes. Sort of feel the outline of the sitting body. Just going to move our attention down to the body, feeling those different contacts and sensations connected with each part of the body. And feel the eyes and the sockets, Those are producing certain contacts and sensations and feelings. You feel the skin on your face, those are producing different contact and feelings. Just letting the attention move down to the body, feel the shoulders, skin touching, clothing touching the skin of the shoulders. Feeling the weight of the arms hanging from the shoulders. Feel the hands and fingers touching together. Feel those subtle life force vibrations, might be pleasant feeling arising due to that contact. And the liking of that, perhaps. You'll feel where the buttocks press the seat. Feel that contact. Sensations or feelings arising. Try to feel your feet and toes. Just mentally remember sitting, sitting. Now let the awareness kind of come back up and rest on the eyes again. Try to feel the outline of that sitting body, all those different places, the head, shoulders, arms, hands, buttocks, feet. There's hundreds of different contacts producing hundreds of different sensations, each with their own particular feeling. And we may like some of them, we might not dislike some of them. Some of them are pleasant feelings, some are unpleasant feelings. If you have particular pain somewhere. And begin taking some more deep, slow breaths like we did in the yoga. You take 2 or 3 seconds to feel the expanding in breath. Hold the breath in for a few seconds. Feel that pause. Might feel a pleasant feeling or a painful feeling. You hold the breath in too long, there'll be a painful feeling, and then you let out the breath, it'll be a pleasant feeling. Just take a few more deep, slow breaths like that, developing this mindfulness. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. And breathing out, sit sitting here and now. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. Breathing in, feeling the whole body. Breathing out, feeling the whole body. Just observe every moment of that breathing process is producing different contacts, producing different sensations, feelings. You can continue doing the deep, slow breathing a little longer if you're not tired of it. At a certain point, on a certain out breath, you can discontinue the deep, slow breathing, just letting the breathing return to its uncontrolled, shorter, irregular rhythm. And continue to follow and feel the breathing process. Try to tune into the 4 phases of each breath cycle. The expanding in breath and the brief pause. The contracting out breath and the brief pause. Particularly just try to feel those sensations where the clothing is rubbing against the skin, the abdomen, rib cage, or chest, producing those contacts and sensations. Help you remember your breathing. Just develop this ongoing, continuous, present moment awareness. In, sitting, out, sitting. This breathing going in and out of the sitting body. In, sitting. Out, sitting. Breath by breath. moment by moment, particularly paying attention, contacts producing all the different sensations, some of them being pleasant or more or less pleasant, painful, unpleasant. It's all happening within this name and form, this mind, body, producing the consciousness. Consciousness producing name and form producing consciousness. Means the breathing body. The breathing body is created by the consciousness, by the mental formation. Because the consciousness is front and center, you're having those contacts. Because if you get lost in your thoughts and you're no longer feeling the body, then you won't have body consciousness. You'll be lost in thought consciousness. If you can, just try to keep that outline of the sitting body in the mind's eye, with the breathing going on in the middle. Being alert and aware for the different sensations or thoughts coming and going, or sounds coming and going, different contact, the feelings produced from those contacts, pleasant feeling, painful feeling. And the thoughts generated because of those feelings. If you catch the mind lost in thoughts, recognize it as lost, lost, thinking, thinking. Take a deep, slow breath, bring the mind back into the body, centered in the body, in, sitting. Out, out, sitting. As in this breathing body is where all the contacts are occurring, all the feelings are being generated. Just noticing how quickly all those contact sensations are continually changing. Process of contact, feeling, craving, grasping. The world creating process. And just think about that. It's investigation of Dhamma. Because of contact arises the feelings. Feelings produce craving, liking, disliking. Go on to produce grasping, clinging. Ending in karmic production, action. It's all right there in this breathing body. Just observe it. Help maintain alertness, specifically to feel the brief pauses between the breath. What kind of a feeling arises during the pause between the breaths? The pause after the in breath, pause after the out breath. Keep turning up the power of the mental microscope. Notice more and subtler details, connections between contact, feeling, craving, grasping, even becoming, your reaction. Becoming is also your feeling of yourself, your sense of I, me, or mine, is existence. You think you are existing, it's because of the accumulated past becoming. It produces this connection between becoming and existence, how the self is created. And grasping produces the existence. Because you want something strongly, you think you exist. Investigate that one. But any time the mind becomes confused or dull, go back and take a few more deep, slow breaths. Just come back to simply in, sitting, out, out, sitting. You have a deep level of concentrated awareness, onlooking awareness, this sitting, breathing body, aware of the moment to moment contacts, impingements, sensation. Just try to become like an empty house with nobody home to answer the call, knocking on the doors and windows. Just letting that remaining little sense of I or me kind of just gradually dissolve in the expanded space of detached, onlooking awareness. when there's no more craving or grasping for any of the contacts and feelings or thoughts. Feeling of the I or existence begins to dissolve. Because of that contact, what feelings and thoughts arouse in the mind? Sabbe sankhara anicchati yada panyaya pasati atane bindati dukkhi yesumango visuddhiya. Dukkha patta ca nidukkha bhaya patta ca nibbaya sokha patta ca nisokha hontu sabbe pipanino. All conditioned things of this body, mind, and world are impermanent. They arise only to briefly last, then vanish. When one sees this with the eye of wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with suffering. This is the path to freedom. And may the suffering be free from suffering. May the fear-struck be free from fear. May the grieving be free from grief. In this way, may all beings live with mindfulness and wisdom. Thus spoke the Buddha. In this meditation, I invite you to join in chanting the word sadhu 3 times slowly. We do the chanting on a long out breath to feel those sensations arising in the body and mind. Take a deep breath. Now place the hands at the edge of your knees. Take one more deep breath. So breathe in, stretch the head back, pull the hands on your knees to arch your spine. Hold it for a few moments. Feel those sensation. Lift the head up on an in breath. On an out breath, press the chin to the top of the chest. Stretch the neck vertebrae. The in breath, lift the head up level. And on the out breath, relax, put a smile on your face. Okay, friends. So I hope you're all able to have at least some minutes of some good mindfulness, concentrations, insights into the nature of name, form, consciousness, contact, feeling, craving, grasping, becoming. Because that's really for the whole process of developing wisdom arises, developing the necessary mindfulness and concentration. Okay?
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you.
Thank
Good
you,
night,
Bhante.
everyone.
Well, as a reminder,
Sadhu.
as a reminder, this weekend, I'm going to be giving a Zoom DOM Zoom program, DOM, sponsored by the Ottawa Buddhist Association, and I sent the links and the schedule, the timing of that, and the schedule in my mailing on Monday. I hope you're all able to get in that. There'll be a talk and meditation on the Friday evening, and DOM from 9 to 3 on Saturday, over the Zoom. Now, if any of you live close by the center here, then you're also welcome to come and do that DOM even in person here at the
Good.
center if you happen to be close by, or to participate over the Zoom. So,
Thank you.
Thank you, Bhante.
next week, we'll continue our discussion of this sutta, try to reread it at least once or twice or more times, and try to pay attention to some of these steps of Paticca Samuppada in your daily life, especially the contact, feeling, craving, grasping, and becoming, because that's really probably the most important part in terms of our actual living of this sutta to understand. Process. Okay? So all the best. Remember, mindfulness a day keeps dukkha away.
That's right.
M&Ms.
What came first?
M&Ms.
And then,
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you, Bhante. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
of course,